Okay, so today what we're going to be starting is still in the unit for for equations, for multi-step equations, but in fact it's something called consecutive integers, and it's a part of the multi-step equations. You're going to definitely need to take a few notes today, or you will be so lost you won't know what to do. And I'm videotaping for anybody that's at home with COVID, and I'm all up in Ethan's. But he is okay with that. Trying to get it to where the board is not quite so crooked. Um, Consecutive integers, this section that we're in, it's not a unit, it's within our unit, but it's a section. Consecutive integers is all word problems, but they are not hard once you get the hang of them. Now, with consecutive integers, before you ever start trying to work the problem, you have to identify what I call the big three. You must do the big three for every single problem. And I have a good reason for saying that. I've been teaching this 21 years. I know what mistakes you're going to make. And if you don't do the big three, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You will not be successful at all. So you might be saying, well, what is the big three? The big three is going to be within every question that we do. So I'm going to call it the B3, and you can too, just to make it not so long. B3, number one, I want you to ask yourself, how many? Just write how many, you'll understand in a minute. Number two, you're going to write what kind. And then number three, we're going to name them. This is your big three. You will do, every one of your problems will have the answer to this within the problem. What are you doing?
I'm trying to think, because there's a Marvel movie where I think it's what is it? Winter Soldier, and they named the big three and
Oh, really?
Wizards and what other? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I didn't know that. But I started doing this years ago when I was teaching the consecutive integers and saw the mistakes the kids were making. I was like, oh, how can I fix this where they don't make that mistake? And this is what I came up with. I've been teaching it this way ever since. You have to ask yourself that every time we do a problem. And you will also see that on the yellow sheet there where I just changed it today, your essential question, what are the big three? So let's see how this works. Watch what we do. And let me find one I want to use. We will use this one. Okay, if we were looking at number one, if we were going to work with number one, before I even read the problem, now that's a small one, that's an easy one, so reading it's not a big deal. You've read it within seconds, but these get bad, they get big. And so I don't even want you reading the problem. I want you to answer the big three. So big three, number one was how many? It's going to tell you in the problem. You can see I just circled three. It tells you three. So your number one of your big three is three. Number two on your big three, what kind? Okay, here's your options. Either consecutive, consecutive odd, or consecutive even. If it's odd or even, it will say that. This problem is simply consecutive. There's no odd or even, so we just write consecutive. And then the last one is to name them. Well, we're not going to name them yet, because I've got to explain the naming part. So I'm going to take the camera over to the board, because I'm going to work on the board for a second. And here we have the big three, okay? We've already answered 1 and 2. We just have to name them, but you have to know how to name them. So first of all, we have to ask you, do you know what consecutive means? Anybody? What does it mean? One right after another. How many, on normal weeks, how many consecutive days do you come to school?
5.
We come to school 5 consecutive days. So consecutive is one after the next. Well, I will tell you our 3 choices are either consecutive odd, or consecutive even. When we ask you what kind, these are what you're going to tell me. Which one of those it'll tell you in the problem. Every single one of them, your first unknown, because right now they're unknown. They're going to be known here in a minute, but right now they're unknown. Your first unknown for all three will be x. Because we don't know what it is. Now it gets tricky. Because let's say we're talking about 3. And let's say we're talking about 3 consecutive. Okay? Let's look at numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If my first unknown is called x, and I have a second unknown, and they're consecutive, which you just told me means one after the next, how many am I going to add to any one of these numbers to get to the next number? 1, right? Doesn't matter. From 1 to get to 2, I'm going to add 1. From 2 to get to 3, I'm going to add 1. 3 to get to 4, I'm going to add 1. So if they're consecutive, my second unknown is x plus 1. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, if we're adding 1 on consecutive, what would my third one be called? Huh? No, I have x plus 1. What would the next one be called? X plus 2. Because you already told me I'm adding 1. So add 1 to this, and what do you get? If I had another one, what would it be? What, and then? Yeah, you're just adding 1 each time when you're talking about consecutive. Do you guys understand that concept?
Yeah.
If we're talking about, I should move these numbers down some. Now, odd and even are the same, and you'll see why in a minute. My first unknown is still x, always x. But if we're talking about odd numbers, let's look at an odd number. It doesn't matter which one, I'll just pick number 1. 1's an odd number. What do I have to do to that odd number to get to the next consecutive odd number? Had how many?
2.
I added 2, so my second one would be x plus 2. If there was another one, what do you think it would be called? X plus what? 4, because I'm adding 2 each time. Did you have a question?
Yes, so this is the rule like the whole time, so like with any number it's like the consecutive is always x plus 1, x plus 2.
Yes. It's a rule every time. And the great thing about odd and even, they're the same. Because look, let's look at an even number. What do I do to get to the next even number? Add 2. So it's the same. What do you think the next one is? Do you guys understand that? If you understand that, you're going to be okay. That's the hardest thing for kids to understand. When we talk about odd, they want to say x plus 3. Because 3 is an odd number. No. It's what do you do to an odd number to get to the next odd number. So if you will keep that in mind, you will be successful. So your consecutive x plus 1, x plus 2, odd or even. X plus 2, x plus 4. And then we can go from there, x plus 6, x plus 8, x plus 10, however many times we need. Now, do you understand that? So now I can go back to this lesson. And now I can do the third big 3. I've only done 2 of them. I know I've got 3 of them. I know they're consecutive. And on the naming, you have to name them. And I do not want you to combine that with creating the equation. I'll tell you, you'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. Our names have to be separate. So if they're consecutive, I have an x plus 1, x plus 2. That's 3 of them. So do you guys understand what we just did? After I do the big 3, then I can go back and I can read the problem and I can create the equation. Do not, and this is what kids do, and it will be a big mistake. Do not, when you get comfortable with this, start making this your equation. Oh, I'm going to name them, and I'm going to go ahead and put pluses in here too, because I know that's what I'm doing. I'm adding everything. No, do not do that. Separately from your names, you will then move over and we will create the equation. What does is mean in mathematics?
Equals.
Equals. The way to do these consecutive problems is to create them as you read them. And when they get a little more complicated, you're going to see what I'm talking about. So this one says the sum. What does sum mean? Add. So the sum of all three of these bad boys, that means x plus 1 plus x plus 2. That's the sum of all three of them is, that means equals, 39. There's my equation. Now I solve it. Combine your like terms. Subtract 3. Divide by 3. And x equals 12. Now you can go back to where you named them. And you can say, well, if x is 12, then 12 plus 1 is 13. And 12 plus 2 is 14. And then answer the question they asked. In this one, they only want the middle number. So the answer to my problem would be 13. It wouldn't be all of them. If you give me all of them, I'm going to mark it wrong. And the reason why is because maybe you don't know how to read. Because it asks for the middle number. So I'm going to make you really get to where you're reading. Got to work the whole problem. Then go ahead and put your numbers up here with where you named them. And then say, what is it asking me? And then when I find out what it's asking me, then I can put a box around it or put it in the blank or whatever it is you're doing. Do you guys understand what we just did?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure you're not expert yet. Yes. Where did the second 3? Where? Where did that come from? Okay. When I combined my like terms, I said I got 1, 2, 3x, and I have a 1 and a 2. That's 3.
Oh.
I'm combining my like terms.
Yeah.
We're still solving multi-step equations. We're not doing anything different. We're still solving equations.
Should we always use x?
Yeah, well, I do. They don't always. Some of the problems, like you're going to get something today, they might use n. I don't care what variable you use, really. I just tend to always stay with x. Even when they have n's, I still put x. So I don't care what the variable is. All right? So I want you to try to work once I find what I've done with it. Oh, I know why it's hidden. I want you to do number 1. And if you're watching the video from home, you should be doing number 1 also. And if you're not watching the video at home, but you're home, you should be. Also, I want you to keep in mind that if you are ever home, when it's a test day, you cannot take a test from home. I will delete it. I've got to do that with somebody in 4th period. They didn't know. And they said, oh, well, that's what we're doing. There's the test. And they start, you're not allowed to do a test from home. So if it's a test day, you just don't do anything for me. You have to wait till you're here. Now, everybody should be doing the big 3 before they do anything else on this problem. Do your big 3. Then create the equation and then solve the equation. So my big 3, my number 1 is how many? How many did you put? 2. It tells you right there. Number 2, what kind? Consecutive. And number 3, let's name it. What's number 1 called? X, always. What's the second one called?
X plus 1.
X plus 1. Now I can set it up. It says their sum, so that means X plus 1 is, that means equals 123. This is easy enough. 2x plus 1 equals 123. Take away 1. 2x equals 122. So x equals 61, it looks like. So I go back over to where I named them. And this one is 61, and this is 62. And they wanted both. So the answer would be absolutely both of them. Did everybody get that right? 61 and 62?
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. So I want you to work number 6. Oh, go back? Yeah. Work number 6. Was your first one called X? And was your second one called X plus 2?
Yes.
Good deal. Okay. Now it says their sum is negative 38. Here's where you might have messed up. X plus 2 equals negative 38. You have to really know those integers or use your calculator. 2x plus 2 equals negative 38. Take away 2, and 2x equals what?
Negative 36.
Negative what?
36.
Negative
Wait,
40.
Oh.
Because negative 38 and a negative 2 is a negative 40.
Okay.
Divide by 2 and x equals negative 20. So now I can go back up and say I've got a negative 20 and I've got a negative 20 plus 2 is what?
20.
Negative 18.
18.
Be careful of those.
My calculator comes in handy 'cause-
Use your calculator or you better know your integers.
So it's asking for both of them?
On that one, it's asking for both. So it says to find 2. And you'll see the difference in a minute. We're getting ready to go ahead and show you a harder one. Those are very simple. I don't tend to do a whole lot of these. They're too simple. My poodle can do these with one paw behind his back and blind in one eye. He can. So, let me show you where we're headed. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the hard stuff. Are y'all ready for me to change it? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Let's look at number 2. All right, again, we got to do the big 3 before we do anything else. So my number 1, how many, y'all? Just look and see how many. Don't read the problem. 3. Number 2, what kind? Odd. So if they're odd, what's my first one called? X. What's my second one? X plus 2. What's my third one? There you go. We got them named. Okay. Now we're going to go back and read it, but while we read it, we're going to build this equation, and you're going to see how easy this is. It says twice the smallest. So how do I show twice that? 2x. Twice the smallest. Smallest is x. Twice the smallest of 3 consecutive odd integers is,
7 more than.
what do we put for is?
Oh,
Equals?
Yeah.
7 more than, how do I show that? 7 plus, 7 more than is plus, the largest. And the largest is x plus 4. Then you might say, well, wait a minute, we didn't even use the middle one. No, we didn't. But we had to name them all to know what the largest one was called. So you're not always going to use them in the beginning. Now, we're going to go ahead and solve this. So let's combine our like terms. So I have 2x equals 11 plus x. I'm going to subtract x. That means x equals 11. Well, 11 is an odd number, so I've probably done it right. I'm going to go over here, and x is 11. That means this is 13, and this is 15. Then I'm going back to see what does it want. It wants to find, oh, it says find all 3. So my answer would be all 3 of them. Do you guys understand what I just did with that?
Yes, ma'am.
You build it as you read it. Now, something a lot of people get wrong, and I want you to be aware of the mistakes that can be made. If they said, right here, look at these words, is 18 less than? This is what people do. They put their equals, there's your equals, equals. 18 less than, they do this. That is not 18 less than, you guys.
It's negative 18.
That should have been equals. I'd put an 18 and a minus in front. That's 18 less than.
So when it says a number and then less than, it's the subtract says in front of the number, and then the more is behind, or the addition sign is behind the number. Right?
I don't know what you mean.
So 7 more, or like 8.
Oh, 7 more, yeah. I put a 7 comes first, so I put a 7.
Yeah.
Then it says more than is plus. It wouldn't matter if you put plus 7, but I just do it. I write it as I read it. And that's why when they say, is 18 less than, I put the 18 and the minus in front and keep on trucking. Write it as you read it. So let's go ahead and do that one I just started right here. Let's do that one together. And let's first do our big 3. So you guys can do the big 3. Go ahead and get your big 3 written down.
Number 3.
How many?
Uh,
What kind?
3. Oh, we're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing number 3.
Okay.
And then what are our names? X.
X
Plus 2.
X plus 4.
Yep. Okay. That's our setup. Yes. No, in the middle of a lecture. Absolutely never. Are you writing this stuff down? Are you putting anything on paper? Okay. You better be working this. All right, now I'm going to write it as I read it. So I start. 5 times the second. Well, the second is this one. How do I show 5 times that? 5 parentheses, x plus 2. 5 times the second of them is, that's equals, 18 less than, 18 with a minus in front, 3 times the sum, 3 times, look what I did, 3 times the sum, that means I'm adding something, of the first and third. The first is x, and the third is x plus 4.
Okay, 18 less than. Oh, because it's 3 times the sum.
The sum of the first, yeah, they say you have to add those, the sum of those. And I have to write it where you can read it. Okay, now we're going to distribute. And here I'm going to combine like terms first. So I've got 5x plus 10 equals 3 parentheses 2x plus 4. minus 18. Look to make sure you know what I did. I just combined my like terms here. Now I've got to distribute this one. So now I've got 5x plus 10 equals 6x plus 12 minus 18.
Where'd that 2 come from? Where'd the 2 come from?
Where'd the what come from? 3?
The 2.
The 2. That 2?
X plus X.
I combined the
Oh,
two
X plus
x's.
X.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good question. I combine those two x's. Now I'm going to combine these like terms. So I have 5x plus 10 equals 6x minus 6. Now I'm going to subtract 6x. And I get a negative x plus 10 equals negative 6. And now I'm going to subtract 10. And I get a negative x equals negative 16. Therefore, x equals positive 16. Now I'm going to go up where I named them. And this is 16, 18, 20. And I go back then and say, what does it want? It wants all of them. So my answer is all of them. Yes.
So when there's a negative, so like how it's negative x equals negative 16. So I know when it's like, I don't know, negative x equals 7, you would just like flip the sign.
You just you change them both.
Okay.
So if that's negative x and a negative 16, if it becomes positive, that becomes positive. If it was a negative x equals 16, change that to positive and that's a negative.
Okay.
You just flip them each. Yes.
How'd you get the 20?
How did I get the 20? Let me find the 20 you're talking about. Oh, this 20? Well, if x is 16, what's 16 plus 4?
Oh.
Good question.
How did you get the 4 in the parentheses?
How did I get that 4? That 4? And how did I get that? It said 3 times the sum of the first and the third. The first is x, and the third is x plus 4. So it said 3 times the sum. I have to add those two. These are all really good questions, you guys. Are we understanding? So far, so good? Okay, so this time, can I erase?
Mm-hmm.
This time, I want you guys to do, and I have to work it, so you can't call me over to see if you're right. You have to wait until I work it. This
Last
time,
one.
I want you guys to do number 4. Number 4. Don't forget your big 3. And if you're at home watching this, you should also be doing number 4.
I was doing
still ill?
Yeah.
Why is he out still?
He was back last week.
Huh?
He was back last week.
He was in here last week? Why is he out again then? Don't know.
I mean,
I don't remember him being back, but
he's home sometimes.
I don't know what he looks like because he hasn't been here enough.
We'll probably be staying here the month.
Say what?
I didn't hear him say anything. He has allergies, but
Hold on, let me put this in. He's just missing so much instruction, it worries me. You could put your 7 in for your X's to see if it works. Yes. Yes, twice. 7 times the first 7x. Well, then go up here and put your answers, what they are, and then go back and see what it's asking. It's asking for all 3 of them. Okay, it looks like you guys are getting the hang of it. Let me work this one. And of course, I also do the big 3 before I start. Even when I'm doing these, when I'm making a key or something, I do the big 3 always. So, number 1 is 3. Number 2 is odd. Number 3 is x, x plus 2, x plus 4. And then such that just means this is the situation. Somebody asked me in first period, what does such that mean? It means, okay, here's your situation. That's all it is. Here's your story. 3 times the second. 3 times the second number added to twice the third number is 7 times the first number. That's my equation.
Yes,
So I've got a 3x plus 6 plus 2x plus 8 equals 7x. And then I combine my like terms. 5x plus 14 equals 7x. Where I usually bring my variables over to the left, I'm not this time because it'll leave nothing over here and it'll add an extra step. I'm going to pull the 5 over there. Take away 5x. And 14 equals 2x, therefore x equals 7. A bunch of you had that, so that you have 7, 9, and 11. And it wanted all 3, you have to give me all 3. How many of you guys got that right? Good job. Are we starting to get the hang of it?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to end the video. I think you've seen enough for right now. I might add another one in a minute.